Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger X, the third entry in the Gunvolt series? No, more like the first in the Gunvolt Chronicles spin-off series, right? Does it matter? No one cares? Okay. This was the first entry developed specifically for consoles, the first one to star anyone besides GV himself, and a game I haven't gone back to since my first two playthroughs at launch. Yeah, as someone who constantly goes back to the first two games, especially the second one at least on a yearly basis, it's surprising that I've refused to go back to, at the time of writing this video, the most recent game in the series. Why is this the case? Well, to put it bluntly, I was pretty disappointed with this game upon release. I was kinda harsh on it when I first played it, with my thoughts being along the lines of bad story, forgettable characters, and somewhat of a step backwards in terms of gameplay due to the lighter difficulty and stripped down character abilities. Updated graphics and UI were cool though. If you asked me to do a 10-second review back then, it would have been something like that. I still thought that the game was good and all in a personal sense, but when looking at it with the quote-unquote critical eye, I couldn't help but view it in a more negative manner, and I don't know, something about that wasn't sitting well as the years went by. Even still, however, I never found myself wanting to replay it. The big thing about this game upon playing it for the first time was that it wasn't nearly as replayable as the main Gunvolt games, because there you had things like achievements, material hunting, different modes altering the ways you can play through the main game, and tons of pieces of equipment to heighten your character's personal abilities and raise the skill ceiling as a result. Luminous Avenger X only has the main game, with the biggest alteration to the main stages being a score attack option, where the game locks you out of Privation in Anthem, keeps you at level 1, and makes you do the whole stage in one go, just like Gunvolt 2's runner mode. Not to mention that the equipment system is much more simplified compared to the first games, and Copen's the only playable character. Everything about this game just felt so watered down than the direction I thought the series was going in after how much Gunvolt 2 expanded on the original. But then again, despite, you know, not really wanting to play it, something in the back of my brain was telling me to go and re-experience the whole thing off the chance that I could see this game in a new light. Which brings us to the video at hand. I mean, after looking at the first two Gunvolt games like this, I might as well, right? And who knows? Maybe, just maybe, my perspective and stance on this game might just change for the better. Or worse, you know, that's always possible. Either way, what do you say we find that out? Grab a glass of water and get all snug as a bug in a rug, because this is my revolutionary review for Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger X. I played the game twice for this video, as I usually do when talking Gunvolt, so that was one playthrough doing all the missions, including the secret ones unlocked in the post-game without Privation, and another with Privation just doing the main stages while going for a higher score and faster runtime. So that meant skipping cutscenes. Not like I was missing much, because this story's, it's not great. I was never crazy about the previous two game stories, but I still like them for their fun characters and interactions, and the second game having some legitimately investing story beats and plot twists. But this game is a lot less involved in the story department, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, you're able to get into the real meat of the game, the parts where you know, pick up the controller, a lot quicker than the other two because of this. But you can tell that Inti Creates definitely wants you to care about what's going on, so the fact that I don't even more so here than ever before is a problem in and of itself and worth noting. In order to explain why I don't though, why don't I let you all in on what the story's even about? We follow Copen this time around, who's been wandering the world under the name Ix, fighting against the Sumeragi Institute of Human Evolution, whose goal is to now wipe out any and all non-adepts in order to bring upon a new age of humanity. Quite a far cry from them attempting to brainwash all non-adepts like in the first game, right? See, it's been a little while since the last time we saw our boy, as non-adepts are now referred to as the Minos, emphasizing them now being in the minority compared to adepts. And as a prevalent and powerful human, Copen is seen as a beacon of hope to those who remain, of course, joined by his trusted companion Lola. His other companions from Gunvolt 2, however, are nowhere to be seen for the time being, so apologies to any fans of Meatil and Nori. I miss them too. Instead, after the intro stage, he'll join up with, once again, a new set of companion characters. Only this time, they're much more forgettable than the others. They go by the names of Jin, Maria, Kyota, and, Kohaku. We'll come back to her in a second, but these other guys, I deadass didn't even remember their names until I played the game again for this video. They're so forgettable, and if you don't listen into those conversations, they get the least amount of screen time out of all of the various companions across the series. Anyway, Copen's real goal here is to find a mysterious butterfly effect, which presumably is something Sumeragi is using in their plans to eliminate all humans. So, with the help of these kiddos, Copen sets out to find just that and defeat many of Sumeragi's high-ranking officers. And, yeah, that's about it. Now, originally I had quite a bit to say about the story because I don't think it's very good, but if I could describe all of my feelings in one word, it would be underdeveloped. This is the most forgettable cast of characters besides the main duo, Kohaku and Blade, the ones I actually like. That's because everyone besides these four are underdeveloped and don't get enough screen time. These bosses are the weakest ones character-wise in the series because they're underdeveloped, and I don't care for them as much or find them too entertaining. And due to poor pacing, a lack of urgency, and above all, ending right as it's getting interesting, the plot itself is underdeveloped. I've only sat through the whole thing in my very first playthrough, and even when getting footage for this review, I didn't let the Japanese voice acting play all the way through because I couldn't be bothered and wanted to just get back to the actual game. The whole butterfly effect mission isn't intriguing, and it's not like the game makes it feel like some urgent mission because a ton of levels amount to you screwing around. Like one where you find food for these kids I don't give two craps about, or turning on the hot freaking water? Dude, who cares? What does this have to do with anything? And again, once you get to the final two levels, you start to see some really shocking revelations and plot twists that put a lot of small moments into perspective, and you get excited to see where it all goes, but then it just ends. Why? What doesn't help all of this in the slightest is the omission of mid-stage dialogue, something I complained about for lack of an English dub because there's not much I can do to enjoy them as intended, but I never wanted them gone outright. Just give me a dub. Now that they are gone, these forgettable characters end up with even less screen time than they would have gotten otherwise, and story beats stray even further from being fleshed out in any way, shape, or form. This is probably the most negative I've been toward anything in these Gunvolt reviews, but unfortunately, it's for good reason. From here on out, I have no motivation to watch these cutscenes ever again. They literally don't do anything for me. And I know what some of you are thinking, but Mr. Revolution, do you even care that much about Gunvolt stories of all things? And you know what? Valid. I don't care about the stories all that much. But here's the thing, for as flawed as these game stories are, if they're anything, they're fun. I never forgot these games' plot points, twists, ideas, and characters even after just one playthrough because they were so memorable and off the wall. Especially in Gunvolt 2's case where they just take everything to the extreme and it all becomes that much more memorable and entertaining as a result. But Luminous Avenger X doesn't interest me in the slightest, fails to hold my attention, and leaves a sour taste in my mouth in general after that first playthrough. I want to care, at least a little bit, but I don't, and that right there is the main issue. At the time of writing this, Luminous Avenger X2 hasn't been released, so perhaps that game will expand on the ideas brought up in the endgame twists and make for that much more of an interesting story from the get-go, but only time will tell. As for this game, however, let's just say I gave that start button a real workout whenever someone tried opening their mouth. Thank God for skippable cutscenes, am I right? Despite not being too crazy about the actual characters minus these four, 99% of the character designs are some of my favorites in a series full of great ones. Special shoutouts to Blade and all of their renditions, and this boss whose name I don't remember. Let's see, what's your name again? Stella! Cool! I'm totally gonna remember that 5 minutes from now. Anyway, yeah, Blade, Celine, and the other bosses are the clear highlights among a great list of designs across the board. That other 1% though? Kohaku. What is this? Why is she 15 and T? Why? If you weren't aware, this company's got a bit of a horny side, and I mean, sure, same, but this is just uncomfortable. Actual bottom 2 Inti creates character designs. This is why I don't watch anime anymore. But instead of dwelling on that any further, might I direct your attention to this gorgeous visual presentation overall? Being the first game in the series made specifically for consoles, everything is so much more crisp and cleaner than once possible on the 3DS. Somewhat. I do think that a good portion of this sprite work isn't all that much of an improvement from what we've seen in the originals, but there are some effects here that take advantage of the more powerful hardware. Besides, despite the jump not being as drastic as I may have hoped, the game looks good, so who really cares? And due to the updated UI, there's so much more space for the action to take place on screen, with the futuristic minimalist aesthetic really doing it for me. I was surprised at the rock solid frame rate too, given that I played this on the Switch for the review. I was planning on going for the PC version, but right about here, the game started chugging for me, which I thought was kind of odd. I know my PC isn't the best, but I can run games like Arise and Vesperia pretty well, so what's going on here? Nah, well, it doesn't matter because the Switch version itself runs at a silky smooth, coveted, juicy 60 frames per second. So what is there to really complain about? Love the larger portraits and cutscenes too, even if the characters should have had way more to express themselves further whenever the scenes in question borderline required them to do so. There's a scene where Kohaku's literally fearing for her life, but for some reason we're sticking with this high school track team pose. It's so jarring and unfitting that it made me laugh, and I'm pretty sure that's not how the game wanted me to react to what was going on. The music is whatever. A couple of cool tracks, but for the most part, meh. Lola's vocal tracks were pretty fire though, par for the course. Anyway, getting to the real meat of the gameplay, this is what I was most interested in revisiting for these past 2 reviews. And control-wise, I wasn't disappointed in the slightest. Copen was already a ton of fun to play in Gunvolt 2, but they cleaned up a few areas I didn't even realize needed brushing up, making for an even smoother game feel. The general gist for him is the same. You run, you gun, you dash into enemies to tag them before dishing out the real damage, can air dash in a multitude of directions, and get boss weapons upon defeating the main ones over the course of the game. But upon opening that pause menu, one of the greatest new changes reveals itself. Pervasion and Anthem now have an on-off switch. Oh my god! Finally! And the game lets you know from the get-go that leaving Pervasion on basically makes you invincible, so people can know for sure this time the amount of challenge they'll miss out on should it be kept on. And I don't gotta worry about getting reincarnated when I don't want to anymore. It's treated like the accessibility option it should have been from the start, and I hope they never get rid of these switches. Pervasion in general has also seen a bit of a nerf, as it now takes 2 bullets instead of 1, so I found myself taking a surprising amount of damage in my Pervasion run, and I really like that. It's a way to ease the challenge without getting rid of it altogether, so that those who want to play with it on still feel that little bit of difficulty these games should be known for. I'm very impressed with Pervasion and Anthem's inclusion this time around. Going one step further, I'd love to see the next game ask if you want them on upon starting a new game before you even step foot into the main stage, or something along those lines with a brief explanation to boot. This is great though, never go back, Inti. Another great change is how hovering is handled. Originally, this was a state Copen would only go into after an air dash for a limited amount of time, but now you could hover just by pressing the jump button midair, you can hover for as long as you're off the ground, and you're able to cancel in and out of it as much as you want. It's simply more control, and that's always a good thing. These in and of themselves are already great, but I'm also a bigger fan of the EX weapons here than in Gunvolt 2, having much more variety and different uses. One is a dash attack, another is for chip damage with more ammo, another is for big damage in short bursts with a smaller amount of ammo, and the twin shredders you get from Sarah are the best ones in the game. Well, they're my favorite at least, but really, Zaffre's favorite, objectively the best, potato. Another one of note is the darkness trigger, which activates a sort of Berserk mode, giving you infinite EX weapon usages, but if you're not constantly attacking, you'll damage yourself. It's super cool and offers a new way to score attack, but I don't use it that much personally, I'm not that good. One thing I'm a bit mixed on, however, is how healing's handled. Originally, Copen had a clutch full heal you could use in the pause menu, but now Copen starts off with no way to heal on his own. I didn't like this at all in my first 2 playthroughs, but now I think it makes for a bit of a fun challenge and really forces me to learn the game. Thankfully, checkpoints heal you now, which is a great new addition, so on top of them still being used to bank in your points, deciding to take the heal or not adds another layer to the risk-reward gameplay mechanics. The thing is, however, Copen starts off with very little health, less than ever before, and that caught me off guard quite a few times and plays a great hand in this game's challenge department. I think early on, especially for those playing this for the first time, the low health combined with no real way of healing on your own is a bit punishing. I've personally grown to like it, but you get what I'm trying to say. This can be daunting to many new players. Finally, you have your special, and I'm not sure why Copen still only has 1. It looks cool, hits everything on the screen, and does a good amount of damage, but I got kinda tired of seeing it. GV got 3 of these in his first game. Why can't Copen get another? Especially since he's the only playable character this time around. I want to say this is because he gets EX weapons, but these are just other attacks, not additional special moves. At least not to this scale. I don't know, I would have liked a little more variety, but this does feel kinda nitpicky. What isn't nitpicky, however, is the way I feel upgrades and equipment have been handled. Originally, in order to get new upgrades, you'd have to synthesize new pieces of equipment with materials you'd be rewarded with at the end of the stages, or by completing achievements, on top of paying some in-game currency. Materials were kinda grindy, but the idea behind them was sound. These were used to incentivize the player to come back to stages, and acted as a reward for not just doing this, but doing it well. You get more chances at equipment for finding medallions hidden within the stages, and for getting a high ranking at the end of it all. The better you were, the more materials you'd get, meaning more equipment, more abilities to use in stages, all resulting in a higher skill ceiling. It's as if the game was growing with you, allowing you to do more the better you got, paving the way for new strategies and possible approaches to the many stages. I think this is brilliant, especially since you can very reasonably and easily beat the entire game without so much as glancing at the equipment shop. These are extras. That being said, the process of getting materials could have stood to have been more simplified, since there is some RNG in terms of what materials you do get at the end of stages, meaning inevitable frustration when going for one specific thing you need for a piece of equipment you really want. But the way it's handled here is going way too deep into that simplified direction, because now all you need to get an upgrade is money. You want more dash bullets, a bigger EX weapon gauge, a way to heal on your own? Then you better grind up that money, and that right there is the issue. It's still a grind, arguably even more so. The only way to get money in this game, aside from buying an upgrade that gives you 10 coins every time you kill an enemy, is to pick up coins that enemies or capsules drop, and this breaks the momentum of the game because instead of moving forward, you're screwing around picking up loose change. There should have at least been some way to have them be attracted to the player, because it's pretty annoying trying to get them on my own. And because of how these upgrades and equipment are handled, I wouldn't call them a reward for skillful play, and they aren't even that much easier to get when playing casually. I barely got any upgrades when playing the game normally because I didn't feel like stopping every time I killed an enemy to get coins. I had an air combo to keep going. So is this really that much better than materials? I'd argue no, and even go so far to say that it's a bit worse. I'm not trying to say that the material system is the only way to go. There are plenty of other ways we can make this upgrade system better. If we want to axe materials altogether, my way of going about this will be to reward the player with money upon finishing a level based on their rank. So you can get more upgrades if you play better, therefore maintaining the mindset that these are rewards and ways to raise the skill ceiling. I'd also bring back achievements in order to provide more ways to rack up the dough quicker, since due to this game's lack of them, that slows down the process of getting upgrades even more than you'd expect. Heck, you could even throw in a bonus amount of money at the end if you were able to get all 4 pieces of these X coins scattered across each stage, those of which offering a high kudos bonus if you find them here already. They're basically this game's medallions. But if this were to be the way we go about it, there'd need to be more upgrades and a larger variety at that. I feel like the list of options here was way smaller than in Gunvolt 2, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me considering that this is the next game. Perhaps that's why many of them are so damn expensive. If they were reasonably priced, you'd get them all so fast because of how little there are. Thankfully, just like before, these are extras, and the stages aren't designed in a way that expects you to have any upgrades. So I was able to play the game just fine with however many I got over my past 2 playthroughs, and the level design proved to be rather interesting. The way levels are distributed this time around are by giving you an intro stage first, 3 levels you can play in any order, a mid stage that's about half the length as usual, 3 more stages to play in any order, a boss level, and 3 final stages, with the last 2 being the boss rush split in half with a new boss at the end of the penultimate stage, and of course ending with the final boss. This stage has been on the short side, and in fact, it took me a shorter amount of time to beat this game than Gunvolt 1 or 2, but that's not really wrong or anything per se. In fact, keeping in mind that these stages were made exclusively to compensate for Copen's moveset, this ended up being a surprisingly good thing because more than any other Gunvolt game, this was one that incentivized score attack in a whole new light. Speedrunning. See, GV's gameplay style encouraged the player to rack up those points and look cool while doing it, hence why you receive more points for using specials and killing multiple enemies at the same time. Copen, however, was always about those combos and how many enemies you could kill before landing on the ground since, you know, personally he prefers the air. So that means you won't be stopping a lot, and if enemies are laid out in a purposeful enough manner, you could theoretically get a pretty high score while making your way through the game relatively quickly. And somehow on my second playthrough for this review, that all just clicked. That being said, this means more linear levels when compared to the open-ended direction Gunvolt 2 seemingly was headed towards. And while I'm personally more receptive to Gunvolt 2's approach, linearity doesn't directly correlate with negativity. If anything, that just paves the way for more purposeful design choices and potential set pieces, which this game takes full advantage of. And besides, there are a few nooks and crannies here or there, those of which rewarding you with more money, or those X coins to get a kudos boost, some of which are in fairly cryptic areas, but that's not really something I mind. These purposeful, speedrun-friendly stages only get better the further you go, with the second batch of stages offering some of the most fun I've ever had playing as Copen. I think these are his best stages across both this and Gunvolt 2 by a fair margin. There's a clear way forward, but if you know how to fully utilize his moveset, you can get through them so much faster and are rewarded for doing so thanks to smart enemy placement. This elevator in particular being the best example. You can go all Streets of Rage on it and wait for enemies to come to you while maintaining that safety net, but if you want to be so bold and go ahead, you can get through this segment so much faster than before. It's a serious adrenaline rush that I loved each time. There are so many instances like this in many stages, meaning that in combination with the short length, Luminous Avenger X proved me dead wrong on what I held against it the most, its lack of replay value. Because the truth is, this game is super replayable like the past 2 games, just in a new way, encouraging you to come back not just to get a better score or to achieve those upgrades, but to do it faster. Speed is the name of the game, and that alone is enough for me because, well, I grew up on games like Sonic. Games where just the act of doing it faster makes you feel better and look cooler at the same time. Gunvolt as a series always had a bit of a speedrun mentality, with the past 2 games going so far as to offer a speedrun mode, but I've never felt it so pushed like it is here. Weird then how this game doesn't have a speedrun mode, despite this being the game that could have benefited from it the most. Why is there no speedrun mode again? Why are there no alternative methods to playing the game in general besides score attacking specific stages? Sure, they're not needed or anything, but actually, I just answered my own question, didn't I? Since all of these modes were unneeded, they were cut. In-stage dialogue was also unneeded, same for materials and other specials, they're all unneeded, so why include them? Why bring in all of these extras, bells, and whistles when instead, you can just streamline it all? There it is. This is what left such a bad taste in my mouth that first time through, huh? Gunvolt 1 established the formula. Gunvolt 2 perfected the formula. Luminous Avenger X streamlines the formula. That's what did it for me and why I felt like I was burnt so hard after playthrough numero uno. And keep in mind, streamlining isn't inherently wrong, but it's just, think about it from my perspective and consider how impressionable I was when playing these games for the first time. Seeing how much more Gunvolt 2 added, what are, in reality, unnecessary extras being taken away, left me feeling winded because why remove anything? Just give me more! They only add more things to do and ways to approach this game when I come back to it, hence why I've done just that as much as I have for as long as I have. But sometimes less is more, and Luminous Avenger X understood that more than I could have. And going back to it opened my eyes to this more than I was expecting. I may have been disappointed in the story, and the music may not have done it for me like before, but where it all mattered, when it came to the actual game portions of this video game, it all surprised me because I had a lot of fun, heightened by yet another excellent collection of bosses. Once again, fails to disappoint in this department. They seriously can't miss when it comes to fun, challenging, and dynamic boss fights, at least in the Gunvolt series. And you know what? I can see myself coming back to this game. I finished my second playthrough in just a measly 100 minutes, and that wasn't even me trying to get through the game all that fast, since I would retry every now and then to get a higher combo or something. I can only imagine how much faster I can go a few playthroughs from now because I can get better and I can get faster. A mindset the first two games put me through, and a big reason as to why I fell in love with them. A feeling I may be able to associate with this game now. Now, all of that being said, I still wouldn't call this better than any of the other two. This is what I'd label as the weakest Gunvolt game. The lack of different modes, a shorter list of reasons to replay stages, and a less impactful and fun story do still hurt it at the end of the day. And that's a shame considering this is the first console exclusive entry in the series. I was expecting some big leaps in quality, but I still find myself coming back to these two more than this one. And I'm sure that'll remain the case going forward. But this game isn't bad in any sense of the word. That's so far from the case. After all, this is a Gunvolt game, and that already gives it some points because I love the design and flow of this series. The tagging and zapping, or in Copen's case, I guess a better way to put it would be, soaring and roaring, flying and crying, bouncing and trouncing. Now I'll get back to you on that one. But the point is, Copen's gameplay already offers a lot on surface level, but gets that much better when he truly clicks with you. When you understand the relationship between his movement and the ways his levels are designed. And Luminous Avenger X simply trims out the fat in the overall experience, while unfortunately taking some meat out with it as well. Despite my grievances, this is a great game, and yet another win in Inti Create's collection. It surprised me, challenged me, and stayed engaging the whole way through, which I wasn't expecting upon this revisit, but I sure was glad to be wrong. And hey, all of my issues can be improved upon in future installments for what's becoming a spin-off series, and they won't stop me from coming back to this game in particular. It brings me great joy to say that I've gained a newfound respect and love for Luminous Avenger X, and I can't wait to see where they take it going forward. And isn't that just swell? Isn't that just sweet? A happy ending for me and Luminous Avenger X. For the Gunvolt series, what a hell of a concept. What isn't a concept is how thankful I am for my thumbnail artist, Neo. Bad transition, I'll work on it, I swear, but in the meantime, why don't you give her a follow on Twitter and commission her should you have the money to spare? Link in the description, of course. And if you have some left over, mayhaps join my Patreon, also linked down there. You'll get some nice perks, including being thanked at the end of my videos, just like the people you see on screen right now. Shoutouts to my $10 Mystic artists who go by the names of First Lieutenant Noguchi, Capone Ardelane, Floragrar, Kiara Loveday, Mega Saltman, Neolab, Noah Ignis, and Upscale Wife 417. And of course, much love and a kiss on the cheeks, all of my base and burst artists listed here. If Patreon isn't an option, giving the video a like and a comment are always appreciated, and I'd love it if you were to subscribe for more passionate reviews and content like this one. Especially if you like indie games and Inti Create specifically. I have a lot of ideas and videos on those topics going forward. However you choose to support me, or not, thank you for just watching the video. Hope you enjoyed the past 5 reviews, and if they seem familiar, they were remakes of older reviews I'm not proud of and wanted to do again in order to properly convey the quality I strive for on my channel. There are other reasons I had for revisiting these titles too, better scripting, updated opinions and whatnot, but don't worry, for those wanting new games and topics to be covered, we'll be moving forward for a good while, and I hope you'll join me. I'm gonna bounce, so just remember that as long as you stay hydrated, I'll see you in whatever we do next.